My boss is engaged to my sister, and he's sleeping with me. Just typing that sentence out makes my stomach twist because it doesn't just sound scandalous, it is scandalous. It's a betrayal, it's selfish, it's everything you're not supposed to do, and yet I've been living in this secret for almost a year now. I don't know how to stop, I don't know how it will end. And sometimes when I lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, I wonder if I'm about to blow up not just my life, but the lives of everyone I care about. I'm 26, my sister. Lena is 32, and my boss, let's call him Alex, is 45. Lena has always been the golden child in the family, the one who got the scholarships, the dream jobs, the polished fiancé who looks like he belongs on the cover of Fortune magazine. Meanwhile, I was the artsy one, the scrappy one, the one who changed majors 3 times in college and fell into an operations coordinator role because I was good at juggling details and keeping other people's lives from collapsing. Alex has been my boss for 4 years. He's charismatic in a way that makes people lean in when he talks, and he has that kind of presence where the temperature in the room seems to shift when he walks in. For the first 2 years, I respected him, feared him a little, admired him from a safe distance. But then he met Lena at a gala. I dragged her to as my plus one. They clicked instantly, and before I could blink, they were dating. A year later, he proposed. My whole family celebrated like it was a fairy tale, and for a while I thought it was. I kept my head down, did my job, tried not to think too hard about the fact that my sister was marrying my boss, because that in itself already felt complicated enough. But then last winter, something shifted. It started the night of a storm. I was working late on a budget spreadsheet that refused to balance, and Alex was still in his office making calls. By the time we both looked up, the streets were flooded with sleet, the power flickered, and rideshares were a nightmare. He offered to order food, and we ended up sitting in the conference room with cartons of Thai takeout, joking about how glamorous our lives were. I had never seen him relax like that. He wasn't the polished executive. He was just a man with his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, laughing at his own bad jokes. I laughed too, harder than I should have, and something cracked open in me. He noticed things I didn't think anyone noticed, the way I'd rebuilt the onboarding process from scratch. How I handled a vendor who had been stringing us along, how I stayed calm even when everything was on fire. He told me I had grace under pressure, and I swear my chest physically ached hearing those words. When the storm eased, his driver dropped me home, and in the silence of the car, our hands brushed. It could have ended there. It should have ended there, but idea in single quotes T. 2 weeks later, he asked me to stay late to prep for a board meeting. When I brought the documents into his office, he thanked me, and then he kissed me, just like that. No warning, no build-up, just his hand on my wrist and his lips on mine. I froze for a second, then I kissed him back. I told myself afterward that it was a mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment, but the next day he texted me, "We need to talk." That talk turned into dinner, which turned into a hotel room, which turned into the double life I'm living now. I know how bad this sounds. Believe me, I know. I'm betraying my sister, I'm crossing every professional boundary imaginable. I'm risking my career and my family relationships, and for what? For the way he looks at me like I'm the only person in the room. For the way he listens when I talk, how he calls me brilliant when no one else does. For the way he makes me feel seen. I hate myself for needing that so badly that I'm willing to accept it in the most poisonous form possible. Lena has no idea. To her, the engagement is perfect. She gushes about the wedding plans, the venue, the flowers, the way Alex is so supportive of her career moves. And the sickest part is he really is supportive. He takes her to her appointments, he encourages her, he makes her laugh. When I see them together, I can almost believe in the fairy tale again. Almost. But then he'll text me something filthy under the table during family dinners, or brush my arm when she isn't looking, and I'm yanked right back into the reality of what we're doing. I don't know if he loves me. Sometimes I think he does, in his way. He tells me he can't stop thinking about me, that I challenge him, that I make him feel alive. Other times I think I'm just the distraction, the forbidden fruit that makes his otherwise perfect life more exciting. He swears he's still marrying Lena because he doesn't want to break her heart, because he wants stability, because he thinks she deserves the picture-perfect life. So where does that leave me? In the shadows, sneaking kisses. In stairwells, deleting text threads before family brunch. Crying into my pillow at 2 a.m. because I don't know how I became this person. Every time I tell myself I'll end it, I find myself right back in his arms. It's like an addiction. The secrecy, the intensity, the danger, it's intoxicating. And yet, it's destroying me. I can't look my sister in the eyes without feeling like my skin is burning. I can't sit in meetings without hearing the echo of his voice in my head. I've even started slipping at work, missing details, zoning out, because my brain is tangled up in guilt and longing. My friends have noticed. I'm distracted. One of them even asked if I was seeing someone, and I lied through my teeth. I don't know how this ends. Maybe Lena will find out on her own. Maybe I'll confess. Maybe Alex will get bored and walk away, leaving me with nothing but the wreckage. I keep imagining the explosion my sister's face when she learns the truth, my parents' disappointment, the look in Alex's eyes when he realizes he's lost everything. I want to stop it before it gets there. I want to crawl out of this hole I've dug. But every time I try to climb out, he pulls me back down with a look, a touch, a promise whispered against my skin. And here's the worst part. A tiny, shameful piece of me doesn't want it to end. That piece imagines what it would be like if he chose me, if we came clean, if somehow we survived the fallout and built a life together. It's a fantasy, I know, but it's the fantasy that keeps me hooked. Because if he doesn't choose me, if this really is just a fling to him, then I've ruined everything for nothing. So that's my confession. My boss is engaged to my sister, and he's sleeping with me. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect understanding. I just need to tell it straight because carrying it inside me feels like gripping a live wire. I didn't set out to be this person. When Lena first introduced him, I laughed. We were at my parents' house, and she swept in with that linen trench she wears when she wants to look like she has a publicist. And behind her was Alex, my boss, the man with the glass corner office and the calendar that looks like a Tetris board. My mother froze with the salad tongs mid-air, and my father's eyebrows did that surprise arch he saves for stock market gains and celebrity sightings. Everyone recovered quickly because Lena makes everything look intentional and obvious. In hindsight, of course she would fall for a guy like him. Of course he would fall for her. He brought wine, shook my father's hand like a gentleman, kissed my mother's cheek like he'd been doing it for years. He caught my eye and smiled. And there was a beat, an odd weight in the air, like a click inside my chest that I ignored because the alternative was too ridiculous to consider. For the first few months, I avoided them. I dodged family dinners and left office parties early. I learned the calendar of their courtship like a second language without meaning to. Friday flowers delivered to our lobby, peonies, blushers, Sunday farmers markets where they bought figs and pretended they knew what to do with them, Tuesdays when she stayed over at his place because her Pilates class was near his building. I told myself it was healthy distance, that I was protecting my job and my peace, but the truth was uglier. I didn't want to watch him look at her in the way I secretly wanted someone to look at me. The night the storm trapped us in the office, it felt like the city had been put on pause. The windows were latticed with sleet, the kind that pebbles the glass like fingernails. The motion sensors kept shutting off the lights, so whole sections of the floor went dark and then flickered, awake when we moved like we were ghosts haunting our own workplace. The vending machine ate my last dollar and refused to cough up a granola bar, and I swore at it with a petulance that surprised both of us. Alex laughterly laughed, not the polished chuckle he takes to boardrooms. He dug a protein bar out of his drawer and slid it across the table to me like he was making an offering. We ordered Thai and ate it out of cartons at the long conference table, our coats draped over chairbacks, and our phones face down like they were too bright for the dark. He asked me about the onboarding flow I'd rebuilt. He told me he'd read the vendor emails I'd wrestled with, and that he was impressed by how I'd stared them down without raising my voice. He said, "You have grace under pressure," and I laughed because it sounded like something you'd put on a corporate mug, but then I realized he meant it, that I could fall apart and didn't, and he saw that, and suddenly I felt like I hadn't taken a full breath in months. When his driver texted that the roads were passable, he offered me a ride. I could have said no. I could have called a car and shivered on the curb with my own choices. Instead, I slid into the back seat and watched the snow smear the streetlights into halos. Our hands brushed when he reached for the seatbelt. It was nothing. It was everything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake and argued with myself, like a courtroom in my head where I kept objecting and sustaining and overruling. Until dawn. 2 weeks later, after a late meeting, he kissed me. It wasn't a cinematic swoop. It was a quiet decision, his hand on my wrist, and then his mouth on mine, and my body said yes faster than my brain could form the word no. If I could go back, there are 1,000 moments I could change. The storm, the ride, the kiss. But the most honest answer is I wouldn't have stopped me, because I didn't stop me then. We told ourselves it was a one-time lapse. Then we met for dinner to talk. Talking turned into a hotel room with anonymous beige art on the walls and the soft whir of an air conditioner that never quite turned off. I cried after, quietly, into a pillow I didn't own, and he wiped my tears with those careful, competent hands and said, I know. I know. We made rules because rules make the unthinkable feel manageable. No texts after midnight, no lingering at work, no meetings alone with the door closed, no showing up at my apartment unannounced. Our rules did not survive a week. The affair settled into my life like a fever. It was in my cheeks and my heartbeat, and how I flinched when my phone lit up, and how my hands shook when Lena hugged me. He would sit at a family brunch and make my mother laugh, and under the table he'd tap his foot against my ankle. A small Morse code that said, I see you, I see you, I see you. I started carrying a second tote for lies. I tucked a hairbrush, and a toothbrush and a black dress that didn't wrinkle into it, like a kit for a life I wasn't supposed to be living. I deleted entire text threads. I learned my own face in hotel mirrors. When Lena asked me to be her maid of honor, I said yes and nearly threw up in the Uber home. She sent me photos of dresses and venues and cakes, and I wrote back with heart emojis. Because how do you tell your sister that every tear of buttercream looks like a warning sign when you are the wrecking ball aimed at her cathedral? Work frayed. I stapled the wrong packet onto a board pre-read and only realized when Alex cleared his throat mid-meeting and gently redirected. And afterward, he touched my elbow in the hallway and whispered, careful, and I said, don't. And we both looked like people bleeding invisibly. My best friend Misa asked me if I was in love, and I said no so fast I bit my tongue. My parents kept saying how calm I seemed lately, how centered, and I said thank you and felt like I was agreeing to a crime. In my worst hours, I fantasized about being chosen. I pictured Alex sitting Lena down and telling her gently, like a surgeon asking for consent, and then moving out, and then the slow horror of my family giving way to an even slower acceptance. And then somehow, in the far-off distance, a Thanksgiving table where all the edges had been sanded down by time and children and news stories. It was a cruel fantasy because it required my sister's damage to pave a road for me. It required me to be the reason she learned just how loud a heart can break, so I tried to end it. I wrote a text, we can't do this anymore. It isn't right. I stared at it until the blue light turned my fingers into ghosts, and then I deleted it because I am a coward. I wrote him a letter. I put it in an envelope and sealed it with chapstick because I didn't have wax, and then I carried it in my bag for 3 days like a talisman against myself. When I finally handed it to him, in an empty staircase that smelled like dust and winter, he slid his thumb under the flap and read it silently while I counted my breaths. He folded it back up, put it in my palm, and said, you don't want this. And the worst part was that he was right. I wanted him to save me from a choice I refused to make. The universe grew impatient with our rituals. The first crack appeared. At the bridal shop, Lena twirled in a dress that made my mother cry, and the saleswoman being like a camp counselor, and I held a pincushion and pretended that stabbing my thumbs was an accident. My phone buzzed once, then again. By the third time, Lena laughed and said, if that's work, tell them the company will still exist in an hour. She reached for my bag without thinking, the way she always does when she's fussing over. And me. The screen lit up with Alex's name and a message that read, I need you now. My heart flipped. I fumbled and forced out a laugh. It's just work, I said. She smiled, handed me my bag, and joked, tell your boss his fiancée called. Dibs on you for the next hour. I silenced the phone and swallowed the panic rising in my throat. Later, I changed his name in my phone to Home Repair. He thought it was funny. I didn't. The cracks widened. At the bridal shower, when someone called Alex a romantic, the word made my stomach turn. I excused myself, stared into the bathroom mirror, and thought, I'm going to ruin her. And then came the rehearsal dinner. My father raised a glass to love, loyalty, and family, and the word loyalty crushed me. Alex slipped into the hall for a call. I followed because I always follow, and when he hung up, he touched my jaw. Lena stepped into the hallway holding place cards. She froze. She didn't scream or drop anything. She just looked, measured, and in that heartbeat, I knew she saw everything. No, she whispered, as if the air itself could undo it. Then, how long? My mouth twisted around a lie that sounded like mercy but wasn't. She gave one sharp laugh, said, unbelievable, and walked away.